This is your need to know. This is your need to know.
Welcome to our deep dive, everyone. Today we're going way back to proto-history, that fascinating period between prehistory and written history. It's like we have these societies on the cusp of literacy, but we mostly know about them through the writings of others.
You've got it. Think about it. These proto-historic societies, they didn't have their own writing systems, at least not that we found. So we rely on accounts from other, more literate cultures who documented them.
Right, it's like trying to see their world through someone else's lens. Take the Yayoi period in Japan, for example. We know about them from Chinese records. Or the Proto-Three Kingdoms period in Korea. We know about them from accounts written outside Korea.
And there are examples closer to our own time, too, like the Mississippian cultures encountered by early European explorers in North America. Their stories, their complex societies, recorded by outsiders.
So many fascinating glimpses into these lost worlds. And speaking of lost worlds, that brings us to our main focus today. The Chalcolithic period, often called Copper Age. It's a pivotal era that tells us so much about how societies developed, right?
Absolutely. The Chalcolithic really sets the stage for the civilizations that come later.
All right, so the Chalcolithic. It's all about copper, obviously. But what's the big deal? Weren't people using copper before this period?
Well, yeah, you're right. Copper wasn't unheard of before the Chalcolithic, but this is when things change, big time. It's not just about finding copper nuggets and hammering them into shape anymore. This is when humans figure out how to smelt copper, extracting it from ores, which leads to more versatile tools and objects.
Okay, smelting. Now that's a serious technological leap. That couldn't have happened overnight.
Oh, it definitely took time, and the timeline is huge. We see evidence of early copper working in the Great Lakes region of North America, what we call the Old Copper Complex, and that goes as far back as 6500 BC. But get this, we've even got evidence of copper smelting from an even earlier period, around 5000 BC, in what's now Serbia, at a site called Belivard.
5000 BC. That's even older than the pyramids. That's incredible. To think people were already mastering metalworking back then. So this wasn't happening everywhere at the same time, right? Different parts of the world were on different schedules.
You got it. The transition to the Chalcolithic and later the Bronze Age happened at different paces around the globe. Europe and the Near East, for example, they have distinct timelines.
Okay, so we have this new technology, copper smelting, spreading around. It must have been a game changer. I mean, what kind of impact did it actually have on these societies?
It was a huge impact, and far beyond just the tools themselves. Copper smelting had ripple effects. Think about the Tehran Plain, for example. Archaeological evidence suggests that during the Middle Chalcolithic, around 4500 to 3500 BC, the established trade networks for things like obsidian, which had been a big deal in the Neolithic, well, they collapsed.
Wow. So what happened to all the specialists who were making those Neolithic tools?
It appears those specialized roles disappeared and were replaced by more localized, household-based production. Imagine the social upheaval. People had to adapt, change their way of life. It's a good reminder that technological advancements, even ones that seem positive, can disrupt entire communities.
Right. It's a parallel to what we see today. Technology disrupting industries, changing the way we work. It's fascinating to see how these patterns repeat throughout history. Now, were there any other big surprises from the Chalcolithic? Any unexpected discoveries?
Well, how about early bronze? We have evidence from sites in eastern Turkey, Norsum Tepe, and Dirimen Tepe, dating back to about 4200 BC, and they were already producing an arsenic-copper alloy.
Wow, so they were already making bronze way back then. What's even more remarkable is that the arsenic appears to have been added separately, right? It wasn't a natural component of the copper ore.
Exactly, and that points to a really sophisticated understanding of metalworking for that time. It's mind-blowing.
4200 BC. Wasn't that around the same time as the Ubaid period in Mesopotamia, one of the earliest civilizations?
Precisely. And these Turkish sites, with their advanced metalworking, also show signs of Ubaid architectural influence. So we're potentially seeing a connection there to a powerful and advanced civilization. Another layer to the Chalcolithic story.
It's incredible how these different pieces of the puzzle start to fit together. We've got copper reshaping trade, early bronze emerging, possible links to powerful civilizations. What other developments were happening in Europe during this time?
Well, on the Iberian Peninsula, around 3000 BC, we see walled towns appearing. places like Villanova de San Pedro in Portugal and Los Molares in Spain.
Walled towns. That sounds like a need for defense. Maybe some competition for resources.
It does point to a shift in how societies organize themselves. And here's the interesting part. These towns represent two seemingly distinct cultural spheres. Villanova de San Pedro was part of the Atlantic megalithic culture, while Los Molares shows Mediterranean, even Eastern influences.
So two different cultural groups, but they were still connected.
Exactly. We see evidence of contact between them, trade networks, shared ideas. It highlights the interconnectedness of the Chalcolithic world.
Okay, I have to ask about something that keeps popping up in our sources. These bell beaker people. Who were they? When I hear bell beaker, I just picture people wandering around with fancy pottery.
Well, hold on, because the bell beaker phenomenon is where things get really interesting. They appear across Europe during the late Chalcolithic and early Bronze Age, and where they came from, that's still a big debate.
So we know they had this distinctive pottery, hence the name. But what else makes them so intriguing?
It's not just the pottery. They're linked to the spread of metalworking, too. For example, when they show up in the Carpathian Basin, they encounter the Vuchedol culture. And the Vuchedol evolved from the earlier Yamnaya people, groups linked to the spread of Indo-European languages.
Wow. Talk about a cultural crossroads. What happened when these groups met? Did they just exchange pleasantries and recipes?
More than that, we see a shift in weaponry. The Vuchedol people, who were into daggers and bows, start adopting shaft-hole axes, and that's a weapon closely associated with the bell beaker culture. A tangible example of how these encounters could lead to cultural exchange and new technologies.
So what about the bell beakers in Ireland? Did they bring metalworking there?
Well, it's complicated. Ireland already had its own forms of copperworking using stream sediments.
Stream sediments, so not like the smelting we were talking about before.
Right. They were using different techniques to extract copper from the sediments found in rivers and streams, a more local approach. Reliance on readily available resources. And we've got finds at Ross Island that suggest they had a really deep knowledge of mining.
So the bell beakers weren't the first to work with metal in Ireland.
Nope. But their arrival does seem to spark a two-way exchange. We see them adopting local pottery styles, and later the appearance of wrist guards in their graves. That's a bell beaker thing. It paints a more nuanced picture than a simple one-way transmission of culture.
So the bell beakers were exporters of culture and innovators.
Exactly. And around 2200 BC, Irish food vessels start appearing in Britain. At about the same time, the use of beaker pottery is declining, a cultural shift. Something more significant, we're not entirely sure.
And then there's the halberd.
Ah, yes, the halberd. It appears in Ireland between 2400 and 2000 BC. And I'm not talking about the medieval kind. Think about it. A meter-long handle with a broad blade mounted horizontally. Devastating impact on the battlefield.
I can imagine. A weapon like that, it could change everything about warfare. And this Irish halberd, it didn't stay in Ireland for long, did it?
Not at all. It spread rapidly across Europe, likely changing the face of warfare as it went. A new weapon like that, it changes how battles are fought, how societies defend themselves, even how power is structured. Imagine the impact.
All these artifacts, these clues in the past, they gave us insights into how these bell beaker people actually lived, don't they?
Absolutely. Look at the flint mines of northern Jutland. These weren't just places to get raw materials, they were hubs of craft and innovation. During the bell beaker period, there's this surge in production of lanceolate flint daggers. And that design, it wasn't local, it's clearly echoing trends from other bell beaker areas.
So it's not just the objects themselves, but the styles that are spreading, like fashion trends.
Exactly. And this dagger fashion, it takes off. Spreads from Denmark, then to Scandinavia, northern Germany, what archaeologists call the dagger period, from 2400 to 1800 BC. Interestingly, Denmark also adopts archery equipment associated with the bell beakers, even though their pottery is less common there. Shows that culture isn't always a package deal. People pick and choose what fits, adapt to their own circumstances.
The bell beakers were trendsetters, it seems. Any particular reason why their influence was so strong in some areas?
That's a question archaeologists are still trying to answer. We see pockets of really intense bell beaker influence in places like Mecklenburg, Schleswig-Holstein, even Norway. Was it trade routes, access to specific resources, or something else? It's a puzzle. Lots of pieces still missing.
Wait, there's more? I feel like we've already uncovered so much.
Oh, there's always more.
This is your need to know.
2023, archaeologists unearthed what they're calling the Stonehenge of the Netherlands, near Tiel.
Another Stonehenge. What's so special about this one?
Well, this one dates back to about 2000 BC. It's this huge circular enclosure, ditches, earth banks, and it's aligned with the solstices, probably used as a solar calendar to mark important events. But here's the kicker. They found a glass bead from Mesopotamia buried within this enclosure.
Wow. So that's definite proof of long-distance trade connections between these seemingly distant cultures.
It is. And it challenges our assumptions, doesn't it?
That tiny bead buried in the Netherlands, it tells such a big story. A reminder that the past was far more interconnected than we often think.
It really does. It makes you wonder, what other connections are we missing? What other stories are waiting to be uncovered?
Exactly. Speaking of stories, I'm really curious about those Chalcolithic communities in India that we mentioned before. What was life like for them? Did they have their own versions of Stonehenge and halberds?
Let's shift our focus to the Indian subcontinent then. We have evidence of thriving Chalcolithic settlements in regions like Ahar, Kayatha, Malwa, and Jorwe, each one with its own unique characteristics.
I remember reading about their pottery. They had these distinctive styles, totally different from anything we see in Europe.
Absolutely. Take the Ahar culture, for example. They flourished between 3000 and 1500 BC, known for their black and red ware pottery, often decorated with geometric patterns and stylized animal motifs.
Those sound beautiful. What else set the Ahar culture apart?
Well, they were also skilled copper smelters, produced a variety of tools and ornaments, and their settlements show evidence of planned layouts. Houses made of mud brick suggests a level of social organization.
So a well-established, sophisticated society. What about the Kayartha culture? What makes them stand out?
The Kayatha culture, they were a bit earlier than Ahar, around 2000 to 1800 BC. Their pottery, it had this distinctive chocolate brown slip and incised decorations. They were also known for their use of microliths.
Microliths.
Yeah, those tiny stone tools, probably used for all sorts of things.
Tiny tools. That sounds like incredibly intricate work.
Yeah.
What do those microliths tell us about the Kayatha people?
Well, it shows a high level of skill, craftsmanship. They would often haft those microliths onto wooden or bone handles to make composite tools, so they were probably used for hunting, woodworking, even processing plants.
It's amazing how these small artifacts can give us a glimpse into daily life in the past. So Mawa and Jorwe, those names ring a bell. Weren't they known for something in particular?
You're right. Both Malwa and Jori cultures, which existed between 1700 and 1200 BC, were known for their advanced copper technology and distinctive pottery styles.
So even though they developed independently from Europe, they were still experimenting with copper, pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. Seems the allure of copper was universal. The Malwa culture, for instance, they were producing copper axes, chisels, fish hooks. Shows the wide range of uses for this metal.
And their pottery. What was unique about it?
Malwa pottery, it featured a mix of painted and incised decorations, often geometric patterns, stylized animal and human figures. Their vessels were typically large and sturdy, maybe for storage or communal activities.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the Jorwe culture? What did their pottery look like?
Jorwe pottery is probably the most distinctive of all the Indian Chalcolithic cultures. It's got this characteristic matte surface. Bold, black-on-red geometric designs, spirals, triangles, cross-hatching, really striking visual patterns.
Sounds like they had a real eye for design. Did these different Chalcolithic cultures in India interact with each other much? Or were they pretty isolated?
That's a question archaeologists are still exploring. There's evidence of some exchange, ideas, and goods flowing between them. Similar pottery styles, copper artifacts found in different regions, points to some level of interaction.
It makes you wonder about how those interactions happened. Peaceful exchanges? Or was there conflict, competition?
Great questions, but unfortunately, we don't have all the answers. The archaeological record can only tell us so much. It's fascinating to think about, though, the relationships between these ancient societies, how they might have shaped each other.
Right. It reminds us that human history is complicated. We tend to think of these cultures as neatly defined and separate, but it's all much more nuanced, more interconnected.
Exactly. That interconnectedness, it's a recurring theme. Throughout the Chalcolithic, we see it with the bell beaker culture spreading across Europe, the exchange of ideas between those Indian Chalcolithic communities, that human drive to connect, to share knowledge, it seems pretty universal.
All of this makes me wonder about the bigger picture. How did these Chalcolithic cultures in India connect with what was happening in other parts of the world? Were they totally isolated? Or are there connections we haven't found yet?
That's a question that's keeping archaeologists busy. We do know there were long-distance trade networks connecting regions like Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley civilization, but how far those networks reached those Chalcolithic communities in India, that's still unclear.
It sounds like there are still so many mysteries to unravel, but that's what makes archaeology, the study of the past, so exciting, right?
It absolutely is. It's a process of discovery, always reevaluating what we think we know.
It's incredible to think that these innovations, these changes from thousands of years ago, they still have an impact on us today.
It really highlights that connection we have to the past.
It does. And thinking back on everything we've talked about, there's one thing that keeps coming to mind. We discussed the bell beakers and their influence across Europe. But did they ever go beyond the continent? Did they reach those Chalcolithic communities in India?
That's a question that's being researched right now, actually. There is some evidence that maybe, just maybe, they made it as far east as the Ural Mountains. But we need more research to say for sure.
The Ural Mountains, wow. Wouldn't that have put them near those early steppe cultures that were starting to emerge around that time?
Exactly. And it brings up so many interesting possibilities about how those groups might have shared ideas, technologies, maybe even stories.
It makes you wonder what else we're missing. All those connections that haven't been uncombed yet. So many stories still waiting to be told.
That's what makes studying the past so exciting. There's always something new to learn, always more to uncover.
So let's recap for a moment. We've journeyed through the Chalcolithic, from the very beginnings of copper smelting to the rise and spread of the bell beaker culture. And we even took a look at those unique Chalcolithic communities in India. It's been quite a journey. And one thing is clear. This was a time of immense change and cultural dynamism.
Absolutely. A period of experimentation, innovation, and interconnectedness. A period that really laid the groundwork for all the societies that came after.
It did. But why should we care about this now? Why should we care about a bunch of ancient copper enthusiasts? What can we learn from them?
I think the Chalcolithic has a lot to teach us. First, it reminds us that technological advancements are powerful. They can completely change societies, impacting trade, social structures, even how people wage war.
It's a lesson that's more relevant than ever, I think, especially now with how fast technology is changing around us.
I agree. And the Chalcolithic also shows us how interconnected human societies are. Even back then, ideas, technologies, and goods were flowing across vast distances. It's a good reminder that our world has always been more connected than we might think.
Exactly. And finally, the Chalcolithic showcases human ingenuity and creativity. From the sophisticated metalworking techniques to those beautiful, diverse pottery styles. It's inspiring to see what those people accomplished.
Their legacy is still with us today. And the story isn't over yet. Archaeologists are making new discoveries all the time, and historians are working hard to piece together the fragments of the past. Our understanding of the Chalcolithic is always evolving, always getting richer and more detailed.
That's so true. And with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into the Chalcolithic period. Thanks to all of you for joining us on this incredible journey back in time.
It's been a pleasure exploring this era with you.
We encourage you to keep learning, keep exploring. Who knows what amazing discoveries you might make. Until next time, stay curious.
This is your need to know.
Got a brass hand, ain't it absurd? Gonna grab the mic and flip some words. Rocking the rhythm with a funky flow. My brass hand moving like it's in control. Stepping on stage with a soulful vibe. Spread love around the world wide. Got a brass hand, ain't it absurd? With every move, it's like a magic word. Shining like gold, it's my treasure trove. When I'm on stage, I'm in the groove. In my soul, there's a rhythm that won't quit. I shake it up, gotta let my spirit split. With my brass hand, I'll make you move your feet. Think I'm joking? Well, you better take a seat. Brass hand, it's the sound of the soul. Can't you see? It's way beyond control. When I'm grooving with my brass flips on words, rocking the rhythm with a funky flow. My brass hand moving like it's in control, stepping on stage with a soulful vibe. Spread love around the world wide. Got a brass hand, ain't it absurd? With every move, it's like a magic word. Shining like gold, it's my treasure trove. When I'm on stage, I'm in the groove. In my soul, there's a rhythm that won't quit. I shake it up, gotta let my spirit split. With my brass hand, I make you move your feet. Think I'm joking? Well, you better take a seat. Brass hand, it's the sound of my soul. Can't you see? It's way beyond control. When I'm moving with my brass hand in the air, you can't help but dance. It's everywhere. Got a brass hand, ain't it absurd? Grab the mic and flip some words, rocking the rhythm with a funky flow. My brass hand moving like it's in control, stepping on stage with a soulful vibe. Spread love around the world wide. Got a brass hand, ain't it absurd? With every move, it's like a magic word. Shining like gold, it's my treasure trove. When I'm on stage, I'm in the groove. In my soul, there's a rhythm that won't quit.